Welcome to the channel, folks. Mr. H here for a review of Elizabeth Harvest. Now, this will be non-spoilers at the start. I will give you fair warning, and then we'll talk about the spoilers of this film. This is a genuinely really good film. I had a lot of fun with this. I'll go about it in the same way I did my Captain Marvel review. I'll discuss the good, the bad, and the ugly. So the good is obviously what I really enjoyed. The bad is just middling. And the ugly is what I thought was genuinely really bad about it. But overall, I can highly recommend this film. It was really good. So let's break down just a brief synopsis for it. The newly married Elizabeth, the title character, travels with her husband to his vast, luxurious estate. He explains that she can go anywhere she pleases, except for one locked, forbidden room. On the surface, the premise may just seem very cliche, very paint by numbers, something that we've all seen before. And as we delve deeper into the film, you'll see that there's elements of what we've seen before, but for me, it was told in quite a unique way. I really enjoyed this film. So as far as I'm aware, it had an initial release in Brazil, and then it was also released in Poland, but from what I can see, this film didn't have a wide release. It wasn't really released in the UK, again, from what I can tell, but it is coming to direct-to-video very soon. So I would highly recommend it. Check it out. It has a cast of people which you may not recognize their names, but you absolutely would recognize them when you saw them. We've got Carla Gugino. Most people will remember her from The Haunting of Hill House. She's popped up in a lot of things recently, and she's very good. We also have Ciaran Hinds. Again, there's some issues with the pronunciation of that name, but he pronounced it Ciaran Hinds. You'd recognize him from numerous bits and pieces. Most people will probably remember him from Game of Thrones. He was in there. And then we have Abbey Lee, the title Elizabeth. Let's get down to the brass taxes. It was written and directed by Sebastian Gutierrez, and it's a very good film. It's a bit of an arty film in the respect that the soundtrack complements quite unique and stylistically appropriate camera angles and framing. Not all of it works, but we will get to that. But on the whole, it's a stylistically artistic film. I really enjoyed it and I appreciated it for what it was. But again, not all of it works. In terms of speaking about it in a non-spoiler fashion, the first act isn't... It doesn't engage the audience as much as it could. The first act is definitely the weak area. But I will say this, the first act catches you enough to want to make it to the second and third act. Which is enough, because by the third act closing, I genuinely had a great time with this film. So bear that in mind when you watch this film. The first act is not good, or is not as good as it could be, but it's enough to grab your attention. And if it does grab your attention, you will enjoy the rest of the ride, I believe. So in terms of its structure, and again, speaking about non-spoilers, it's really difficult to discuss this film in a non-spoiler fashion. It is what we would kind of consider a sci-fi thriller. And if I could liken this film to anything, I would liken it, I guess, to Ex Machina. Or even Old Frankenstein. You know, it's definitely in that vein. It has a very humble sort of story that it's telling. And in the way that it's telling, it's not too out there and it's not too flamboyant, it's not too grandiose. It's grounded, but it's a sci-fi thriller in and unto itself with that as well. I really enjoyed it. I'm very surprised that it received a 5.7 out of 10 on IMDb, but that being said, it does have some problems. So what I really enjoyed about this film was the acting, and not all of it works. Okay, so Abbey Lee as Elizabeth is good. She is good, but you will probably not like her character at all times or the characterization. And there are some reasons for that. So, again, I can't speak about it in non-spoilers, but just bear in mind, when you first see her, it's not the be-all and end-all, and you have to forgive the performance because it makes sense later down the line. And actually, when you then take a step back and view the whole film, her acting is very, very good in it. Because of the spoiler part to this review, but I'll get to that. Ciaran Hinds is great. He plays a very menacing and intense, rich billionaire. He's very, very good in this. Very, very menacing, very believable. And I'd like to see him in more roles like this, playing these really intense characters with a great amount of conviction. I would genuinely like to see him in more. Carla Gugino, she's good. She's good in everything that she does. Again, most people remember her from The Haunting of Hill House, and she was really, really decent in it. We also had Matthew Beard. He was good. He plays a blind person. It's not a spoiler. He plays a blind person, the son of Ciaran Hinds' character, and yeah, he is good in it, but he doesn't have much to do. So his character it does fall by the wayside a little bit until the second or third act, where it kind of picks up. But there's not much to comment on outside of he played the role that he was given to a good degree. Now, the other things that I liked in this were the framing and the cinematography. It does have a beautiful grading, and the soundtrack, whilst somewhat intrusive, because it definitely is somewhat intrusive, it makes sense. There's some elements to this story that you're looking at it, and overall how they painted this picture. The music complements it in a way of kind of building up this big painting, I guess. It's a real art piece, and yeah, it doesn't all work. But overall, the soundtrack was very good, mixed with some of the framing. Now, the story on a whole, I enjoyed it, but I only enjoyed it as much as I got to the second and third act. The first act is not that good at all, but it is enough to clinch you and get you involved. So, the bad. Well, the first act. The first act was really, really bad. Because people's attention spans, generally speaking, most people will watch the first act and probably make their decision at that point in time and say that it was a bad film. For me, I watched it with the intention of reviewing it, so I gave it a little bit more of a chance, and I'm glad I did, because it turned out to be a very good film. But definitely the first act is a bit of a struggle, but it would make sense once you get past that point in time. And like I say, the characterizations of Abbey Lee's Elizabeth is not the best. But once you kind of learn why the characterization is in that manner, again, it does kind of make sense. The story itself can be portrayed as somewhat cliche. It's been done before, maybe not in this specific way, but it's definitely a story which we have heard before at some point in time. So I guess one of the bad elements could be the story, but for me it was fine. The real bad stuff, the ugly of this film, is just the very intrusive score at certain points in time. The production budget isn't the best, so it is only in one singular house, and as a result of that, some people would probably be a bit annoyed by that. We don't see too much, we don't go anywhere, but for me, it's what gave this film a little bit more character, a little bit more atmosphere, and something which I can forgive it for sure, because it is part of the story, and it makes sense, but I do feel that some people will probably consider that to be a bad. Now, let's talk spoilers. Okay, so I can highly recommend this film. Go and watch it. I genuinely think you'll have a good time. It's an hour and 45 minutes, so it's not super long, but I think you'd have a good time with it. Now, let's talk spoilers. Let's talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly with the spoilers. So, you've been warned. Okay, you've had your warning. The spoilers to this film and what is so good about it, again, we'll talk about Abbey Lee's Elizabeth. So, she's a clone, alright, and it doesn't really, the first act doesn't set that up. So, you're watching this really rather irritating character. Her Elizabeth, the first version, because there's multiple versions, is really irritating. She's not good. The characterization sucks. But there's a reason for it, which it pays off in the third act. So it's one of those things that you do have to give it a bit of a chance, and I feel that if you do, it would definitely pay off. So that's what was really, really good, is Abbey Lee does play multiple versions of this character, and each one actually has a different characterization, which is very difficult to do whilst keeping the core elements of that character down. Initially, I saw Abbey Lee on screen as this Elizabeth character, and I thought, nah, she's probably not going to be that good. And she wasn't that good, and I thought this is going to be a real slog to get through. But actually, she has a great deal of range, and she gives this character quite a lot of depth. Genuinely quite a lot of depth. Now, in terms of it being a sci-fi thriller and it being scary and stuff like that, look, it's not scary. I seldom think sci-fi thrillers are scary these days. But there is an element of tension, there is an element of atmosphere. And like I say, Ciaran Hinds does play a really menacing character. And as you watch this all unfold, the story starts to build on itself, and you can see the motivation behind Ciaran Hinds. They portray the motivation in a really, really good way, and they unravel it in a really, really good way. Carla Gugino's character seems a little bit lost here and there, but overall, when she's on screen, she does a great job. And the same with Oliver Beard, I think his name was, or I think actually Oliver. Oh no, it's Matthew Beard. Oliver is the character's name. Matthew Beard was very, very good on screen. In fact, actually, although he wasn't given much to do, I wish there was more of him, because he did play a somewhat charismatic character. Now, the bad stuff, again, kind of spoiler territory here and there. It holds off quite close to the end to explain what's going on, and it's potentially of detriment to it, but it does have a nice ramp up as we get there. But again, I feel like a lot of people will probably end up switching off before that point, which is a shame. There's nothing majorly glaring about this. It's a small budget film with a very small scope, and it's not a big scale film. So what most people would probably say is wrong about it isn't what I would consider wrong. It works within the confines of the scope and the budget. It is housed in one place, one location, but it works. It works in that location because obviously she's a prisoner. She's this clone that is finding herself, and I really liked the cinematography in this, and I really liked the sound mixing. It doesn't all work. A lot of the sound stuff, unfortunately, does become somewhat intrusive here and there, and it is, what we would consider the bad and the ugly part of this film. But all in all, as a director, Sebastian Gutierrez, who clearly is trying to do something a little bit different here, and is very clearly putting his own style on the film, it worked for me. I can forgive some of it because it genuinely worked. So guys, if you have not seen Elizabeth Harvest, please go and watch it. I had a really good time with this. This is a film that I actually genuinely would have liked to have seen on the big screen. I think it would have worked very, very well. Some of the angles and framing would have looked great. The grading on this film would have looked absolutely fantastic. And I think it would have had a little bit more impact. So if you haven't seen it, go and check it out. I can highly recommend it. If you have seen it, let me know your thoughts. Did you agree with anything I've said, with the first act, second act, and third act? Do you agree with anything? Let me know down below in the comments. If you are new here, please do hit subscribe. Stay up to date on movie reviews, pop culture news by smashing that bell notification icon. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. I've been Mr. H. Take care.